So good evening. My name's Gareth Dowling. I'm a party organiser at the Co-operative Party. I cover the North West and also Northern Ireland, but I also cover a lot of the local government work that we do, including council recruitment and working with a campaigns officer, policy officer in terms of getting our Co-operative Manifesto onto the agenda at local councils. So we've done a refresh. You might have, for those who are councillors, will particularly have heard of it. We have a Build a Co-op Manifesto tool, which we provide to all of our candidates and councillors each year to put cooperation into their local manifestos for elections, and also to be used as a bit of a checklist for those who are councillors sitting on councils. We've done a bit of a refresh of it in the past few weeks, and this is our formal launch tonight. So without further ado, I will invite our first speaker tonight, who is Councillor Vince Maple, leader of Medway Council, who very famously took control of Medway Council with a full Labour and Co-operative slate, and building on the Labour and Co-operative Manifesto policies, who's just going to talk us through some of the policies that helped him take control there. So Vince's going to speak to us for 5-10 minutes. We do have a second speaker, signal permitting, who I'll try to bring in also. Vince, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Gareth, and it's great to be here and great to be joining cooperators across the country. I'm very proud that not only did we take control of Medway Council last May for the first time ever as a majority group, we were a Labour and Cooperative group, and of 33 councillors, we have 33 Labour and Cooperative councillors. That is a good thing. Not good for us, not good for the party, but good for Medway. It is good for those first two things as well, but really it's good for the people of Medway. And people often ask, what does that mean? What does the cooperative bit of Labour and Cooperative mean? And I want to share just a few examples of that tonight. And again, as Gareth has rightfully said, the Build Your Manifesto tool has always been a really helpful thing. And I think actually, particularly for those of you perhaps who are looking at elections in 25 or 26, I think the refresh has really been a very helpful piece of progress. So again, even if you've looked at it before, do have a look at it again. So let me share 2 or 3 examples, and again, happy if the time allows at the end for a few questions, perhaps if people have got specific questions. So one of the things we're really proud of is how we as a new administration use the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. There are some councils, and that's a matter for them, who have been very top-down using that. But actually we took a very different approach, a collaborative approach, a cooperative approach in bringing community groups together in some cases, encouraging collaboration, and actually having it in a very clear way so people could see how it was being used and used in a variety of different ways. One of our former cabinet members on Medway Council is now an MP, Lauren Edwards, for Rochester and Strood, and she was at the forefront of making sure that it was community groups and cooperatives who could access those funds, often levels of funding which perhaps in some cases would be excessively bureaucratic and have a number of rounds of bidding. We made sure, of course, it's public money, so there needs to be safeguards, but making sure it's very, very accessible. So I'm very proud of that. And again, I know that's been recognised elsewhere. The first motion that we passed as a Labour and Cooperative Council was on fair tax. We brought that forward previously as an opposition group. Our Conservative political opponents didn't support that. So we took the decision, not only we could have just brought it through cabinet, but we chose to take it to council because we think it's important to show those public messages, to give that explanation as to what the cooperative bit of Labour and Cooperative is about, and showing that example. And actually it's in many, many cases, as everybody on this Zoom call will know, for me, the Cooperative Party is often about fairness and equality and equity, and actually making sure that those who are engaging with the council, and as a unitary authority, we have a budget of over £500 million a year. We want to make sure wherever possible that those organisations who we're interacting with sign up to the fair tax ethics as well. So that's an important thing, and again, something which we did literally at our first full council after the elections in May. Something else which I think the Co-op Party has been really strong on, and something that we've encouraged, particularly in very recent times, is the listing of assets of community value. Now, as is well documented, and Medway is not unique in this, we've inherited some big financial challenges. So at the moment, we've had a revenue support grant cut since 2010 of 91%. So that's meaning us having to take some difficult decisions. But part of that, as we're moving forward, looking at our property portfolio, we are actively encouraging residents groups, community groups and others to register things that are of value to them. If you value it, list it. And we did a little bit of that in opposition, but actually we're proactively encouraging that. Now, of course, that does mean, some would say perversely, that actually if we're looking to get rid of properties, that might make it more difficult for us as a council. But for us, it's the principle of saying, actually, if a community group value it, we shouldn't, as the council, a Labour and cooperative-led council, we should be encouraging them to use the tools available to them. And one of those is, you say, listing something as an asset of community value. So we will continue to do that, even if it is us as a council who are looking potentially to dispose of community assets in our ownership, because actually we want to see potentially those community groups and others expanding, growing with our support. We've also been very supportive of our local credit union. I should declare an interest as a member. I was formerly the chair, but I'm no longer the chair, Medway Credit Union. So we've again engaged with them very positively. Now, of course, there's a wider conversation, and this is probably a whole separate Zoom meeting for another day. As we ran into the election last year, we didn't have a detailed manifesto. We had 5 clear pledges around growth and jobs, around green spaces, local community safety, bin collections, and council tax. So we didn't have a kind of multi-page manifesto, but what we were clear on when we were having conversations with residents on the doorsteps was actually we will not just do those 5 things as an administration. So it is about saying we will do more and giving those practical examples. And again, the Build Your Manifesto tool is a really good example for that. And I think certainly one of the things that we will be looking at carefully moving forward is the issue of sustainability, energy, and all of those kind of similar projects. Again, something which we didn't necessarily make a formal pledge on, but certainly my portfolio holder for regeneration and communities is very, very clear on that. And then just finally, last thing I would say, it's about at all times, this is a wider issue than politics per se. This is about ensuring that people know who the Co-operative Party are. So it is about, some of these things might seem quite small, but if you're building a manifesto, which is a cooperative and Labour and cooperative manifesto, you need to have some conversations with people to explain what that might mean. What does that actually mean? So again, you've got policies, but an explanation of what the second bit, particularly for those new communities where perhaps they haven't had Labour and cooperative candidates or Labour and cooperative council in the past. So I think it is just, having these ideas, having these policies and principles, I think was very helpful, not just actually for the conversations with residents, but also actually with council officers, the local media, and everything else as well. So I'm incredibly proud to have 100% of my council as a Labour and cooperative council. From the administration's perspective, we of course have built in things around equalities, which of course are part of the cooperative ethics and values. We have a 50-50 gender split cabinet. We currently have more females than males in the Labour and cooperative group. Compare that to our main political opponents, which here in Medway are the Conservatives, they've got 20 councillors, they have 20 male councillors. That's the differential. So, of course, it's about policies, but it's about principles as well. It's a real privilege to be here. Gareth, thank you for the invite. And again, very happy to take some questions at the end if required. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. I'll just have a quick check. I know that we're having signal difficulties from Kate, so we will crack on. Thank you very much for outlining that. And I know that as part of our growth over recent years, we've moved from about 800 to about 1,600 councillors, and Medway played its part in that. And we like to think that using the Co-operative Manifesto tool, previously it was 12 ideas for your local government manifesto. It had a refresh a couple of years ago. The ideas, the principles, the policies, the initiatives, they all remain the same, but they're constantly evolving, constantly advancing. And what we're getting back now more than ever is being able to point to tangible examples of councils and councillors that are using these to get elected, and once they're in power or in administration, actually delivering on some of these things as well. So if you haven't seen the actual tool itself, I will just do a quick share. I will also put the link in the chat, although I will share the screen as well. Everyone in the meeting. Might have gone in there. So the tool itself. Share now. Okay, so that should be up on the screen now. So it is party.coop/local/manifesto. So you can see it's got undergone a bit of color and font branding. But what we've done is we've collated some of the key priorities that we have as a party that also link in with the new Labour government and the things that they're looking to push forward on as well. And we're quite proud that a lot of the stuff that we're talking about are being backed at government level, through the front benches, through questions in Parliament, and you'll have seen a lot of that through our social media and some of the emails that have gone out over the last couple of weeks and months. So in terms of the actual using the tool, it's very very basic in terms of being straightforward and able to use. But as you scroll down, there's about 7 or 8 different primary areas. So the first one being what we are about as the Co-operative Party, which is of course promoting cooperative development. And what we've got is a couple of different sort of examples of things that you might want to do under each section. So, for example, here as a starting point, you might ensure that cooperative development forms part of the local growth plans or economic development strategies, whatever they might be called in your local area. If you go further than that, obviously, Vince has mentioned about using UK Shared Prosperity Fund to actually create cooperative support within the local economy. And if we're more advanced, particularly for those that have a Labour or Labour cooperative majority, establish or support a local cooperative development agency. And under each section, we have examples from different areas of the country that we've seen have actually been able to implement these things. We're still updating this page, so what we'll do as well is we'll do links to each of these sections. You don't need to go searching for them, but you'll be able to find them online as well. So whether you think you're starter, intermediate, or advanced, you can just basically click the circle there, tick the box, and you'll see they appear over on the right hand side under manifesto ideas. So that's the first section, which is obviously around cooperative development. Co-op growth is our key aim. Growing local ownership. So we've just heard about, and you'll have seen, particularly if you're councillors, you'll have had a lot of the emails around listing assets of community value, and that's something that we're going to see the government pushing forward on over the next couple of months, through the devolution bill and so on. So more and more people, and not just councillors, not just co-op members, but the wider community and residents are registering assets that they want to keep. Then they can gain further protections from them, whether it's the local pub, the local post office, local cinema, leisure centre, community centre, whatever it might be. So if you value it, as Vince says, list it. So then if it ever does come under threat of being sold or being redeveloped in the future, then the community has that right to bid going forward, and will receive support from the Co-operative Party and hopefully from government in securing that for its longevity. So facilitating the purchase of the assets through community share offers and working with other organisations that do provide funding for these kinds of things as well. So we've also got promoting cooperative mutual financial services. So again, obviously credit union, and I'm vice chair of a credit union myself. So obviously you look through your local area. Have you got a credit union? If not, can you look to develop one? If you already have, how we can also promote sign up to it so that people have better access or more awareness of joining a credit union rather than turning to unscrupulous lenders or high interest lenders like credit cards and so on. So promoting credit unions. You see some areas have actually done payroll deductions for their staff. So if you're on a council, that's something that you can look at doing. But if you do have one, whether you can join as a member, whether you can join as a board member and actually support its growth and development. So we've got some great examples from across the country there. Transitioning to community energy is another one of our key objectives, and I'm sure that's no surprise to most people on the call. It's something that has been, is front and center of the general election campaign and linked in with GB Energy. But there's a broad spectrum around community energy that you can look at doing through your local councils and through your local communities. So whether it is at the more basic level of planning in sort of ways of reducing heat loss, so whether it's heavier curtains or more secure letterboxes and so on, so the heat isn't going out of the house, through to more insulation, retrofitting, right the way through to community renewable energy schemes. So actually setting up solar panels, wind turbines, below ground heat pumps, that sort of thing. And we know that there will be funding coming down the line for that sort of stuff. And so if we can get into that now, there are great examples across the country of councils that have been providing seed funding, grant funding to allow communities and councils to set up those projects. So we've got some of those examples inside. And again, you can just click on the little circle and you'll see it adds it over to this on the list on the right-hand side. So these are your lists of manifesto ideas. But before we go through the rest of them, I think it's worth noting as well that this isn't a requirement of every cooperator standing for council has to stand on every single one of these things. These are there for you as a candidate or involved with your local government committee or your local council to have a look at and decide what works for my area. So as I say, some of your areas will already have a credit union. It's up and running. It's very successful. That's almost like a tick box. That's done. What in this list of ideas do you think will help your local residents or help you get elected or help your local council to progress forward? So it's not that you have to list them all, but there are things that you can pick up and say that will look good on my leaflet, that will look good in my manifesto going forward. And as Vince says, some of it is, some people have moved away from the longer manifesto, but the principles and the aims remain the same. And of course, if you're not standing for council this May, but you're involved, as I say, through your CLP, through your local government committee, through any sort of policy development working groups, you can take these manifesto ideas and suggest them in those forums and see how we can embed that. And us officers and staff here at the Co-op Party, very happy to come and speak with local Labour Party units as they develop, local candidate groups and so on. Remaking the housing sector, so there's a range of different ideas in there. Private renters forum, right the way through to a lot of this around capacity building as well within council staff. So we know that there are cuts to councils, but there are things that will hopefully be able to support them, understanding more around facilitating community land trusts and so on, and delivering new cooperative housing. So again, we've got examples there, cooperative housing models in Merthyr Valley and Camden. So the key thing from all of this is that you won't just be starting from scratch. So we've collated these ideas. We haven't just thought, what do we think would be great going forward? We've had a look at what cooperators have been doing across the country, and we've brought that together. So if there's something that you think that would be great in my area, we could put you in touch with someone who's already worked that up, or we can link it to their report or their business plan or the work program to say, right, you don't have to start from scratch. And it's one of the key principles of cooperation, working together and training each other up to do this. Towards ethical tax and procurement, now this is something that we're very proud of, is getting councils to sign up to be fair tax councils. We're now up and over 50 working with Fair Tax Foundation, and maybe around half of them have been brought through the support from cooperators who brought these motions to the council. And most recently, Oxfordshire County Council has just passed that motion only a couple of weeks ago. So it's constantly going, and as we heard from Medway, £500 million budget per year. If that tax is going out of the country, that's being lost in public service. So these clear commitments at local council level to think about the tax and procurement issues locally, it all feeds into the part of the wider strategy. Achieving food justice. So this was something that was, of course, very big during the pandemic, but it's something that was there before and is still there now. So supporting local food banks, local food programs, food insecurity forums, having food security champions. There's a huge range of work that we can all keep doing, developing pantries, and so on. So again, tons of examples that we have from cooperators up and down the country. Then we're looking at developing community and cooperative transport models. So as you can see, there's less examples of this because it's still evolving, but it's something that, again, we can provide a community transport loan fund. Click it, goes on the list there as well. So a huge amount of opportunities, and building cooperative social care. So you will see more, and you'll see more stuff coming through on emails and blogs and social media over the coming weeks and months around cooperative social care models. And we know that this is such a massive thing across the country, and it's one of the biggest things that's hitting council budgets. So we need to have a look at new models, and hopefully with the support from the government, we will be doing that. And safer and stronger high streets. Now, a lot of this is linked back to the a great success in May in terms of electing police and crime commissioners, so police, fire and crime commissioners across the country. So how we work with the community to improve policing, to have communities at the heart of it, and of course working with our partners at USDAW, the Shop Workers Union, with the Co-operative Group and other retailers and retail societies, in terms of protecting shop workers from abuse. And we know that was one of the key things that was campaigned on in the last general election. So there's a huge amount on there, and then you ticked all your boxes. They're all on your list. You can simply click to email it to yourself, and you pop in your details, and that will come straight through to your email address. Nothing fancy. It'll just collate all those things that you thought, you know what, I want to look at them further. I want to chat about them at my local government committee or local manifesto development, and so on. So I hope that's been a useful run through. At this point, I'll stop the screen share, but I will open it up for questions either from myself or for Vince, or if there's anyone on the call. I recognise a few councillors on here. If anyone else has used any particular bits from previous years, please feel free to pop your hand up, and we'll bring you in and hear from yourselves around what you've been able to do. Okay. So if you raise your virtual hand or you pop a question in the chat, we'll take any questions at this point.
Yeah, correct. You will.
Okay. So we've got two hands up, so we'll take the two questions and then we'll come on. So first, I've got Joyce. I'll just ask you to unmute there.
Hi, I notice you've got two Scottish hands, if that's James Mackenzie there, which is quite fun. One thing I would just ask to have good awareness of, especially when discussing things for councils, be very aware when you're using the term UK that you actually are referring to the whole of the UK, okay, as opposed to particularly the non-Scottish situation, okay, which has just different circumstances and different rules and setups. So for example, with the community ownership and listing of assets and asset transfer and all the rest of it, there's massive experience has happened in Scotland, including lessons of what works, what doesn't work, etc. And also that delicate balance of councils looking, you know, budgeting by planning to sell off an asset, okay, to balance their book and or to get rid of a maintenance thing, but actually that asset getting lost and or passing it into community groups, whilst they can get funding for the initial purchase and maybe refurb, don't have core funding to keep a facility running and don't have funding for maintenance. So we need to look much more systemically and strategically at the whole thing. And one of the things I say that we need to look at is how do we work with the Labour Party, the current government, to have a situation that within tax planning, both at corporate level and at private level, that people can put money into a fund which they can offset, but it's made available to be supporting financially things like core funding for community facilities, etc. So there's these kind of strategic things that whilst we're doing really great stuff, looking at all these community cooperatives and things, we also need to look at sustainability, okay? And how do we anchor it for the future generations? So I think we need to do a bit more interfacing with the government on these wider, more strategic issues.
Thank you. And I'll just bring in Jim. Come in now. Thanks.
It's just on the actual for co-op, indeed starting up businesses, you know, for the councils actually to have a network so that anyone who's thinking of starting up a business, hopefully a cooperative business, you can actually go there for financial advice, for support, you know, for learning, for training, so they can actually perhaps even have a fund to, you know, to loan them, you know, finance as well, so that they provide the seed corn for co-op businesses within the community, bearing in mind that a co-op business, once it is started, in fact, it tends to be sustainable and also employing local people and generally keeping the money into the local community. So to have that out there so that a professional, in fact, body of cooperatives tied to the council that can encourage and develop, educate people who are wanting to start up businesses, preferably a cooperative business. Thank you for that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jim. And I'll take the question in three because there's a few more hands. So Jane, I'll bring you in, and then Vince, if you want to come back on any of the specific points.
Lovely.
Jane.
Thank you so much, and thank you for Vince and your own overview, because this is all new to me, even though I've been a co-op member for a number of years now, and I'm also a Labour Party chair in my local area. So I concur with the question about making sure we join all this up, because we've got a Labour controlled council. We have some of our councillors, co-op councillors as well, so that's really positive. But specifically, and it's following Jim's comment as well, that I have done some work in the past for the Cooperative College, particularly working with women's groups who are interested in starting businesses, but in working together. And I'm a local champion for social enterprise, and within that, co-ops. So again, it's about how to ensure the support for groups and individuals who might want to start that, and particularly in relation to managing and running community assets. So that was what I was coming with, but thank you so much, because what I've been inspired by in particular, I'm also a Soroptimist. Some people might need to go and look it up because it's not very well known. It's an international organisation supporting women and girls, and we've got a very strong international movement against modern day slavery. So I loved the Modern Slavery Charter and looked at your list, and disappointingly, my Labour-controlled local authority has not signed up to the charter. Two of my neighbouring authorities have, so I am going to get straight onto my leader, who happens to be female, to the leader of the council, and say, why haven't we signed up? So thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you. And it feels like there'll be a bit of progress straight from this meeting. But if we can help with that at all, please do let us know. Vince, do you want to come back on any of those, and I'll come back after you?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to everybody whose name begins with J. That's not a requirement to ask a question, but it happens to be the first three did. So on the first points from Joyce, I mean, I think, look, first and foremost, blimey, isn't it good to have a Labour government that we can have a conversation about stuff with? And that is a good thing. And I can tell you, I know from the experience we've had over the last 18 months, I feel Rachel Reeves's pain tremendously, having to deal with the economic mess left by a Conservative administration, whether that's in a council in North Kent or a country. So absolutely recognise that. And you're right to raise the issue around making sure that people think about are things relevant and appropriate for their area. Of course, that's been predominantly an issue of nations across the 4 nations, but actually increasingly that might well also be a conversation because of devolution. And actually devolution networks might mean that some things are dealt with not by a council but somebody else. So I think that's right and appropriate to raise that. On Jim's point, yeah, absolutely agree. And one of the things which actually is a new addition to the general guidance from the Co-op Party on manifestos is around SIDS. Now, most people have probably heard of BIDs, business improvement districts, but there is a new, and it's got a wider reach, really, community improvement districts, or SIDS as they're known. And I think there's a couple of examples I know on the website, but actually that's a really good tool. And we're at the moment in Medway considering as to whether one of our 5 towns looks to become a BID or a SID for those exact reasons, to give those people opportunities accordingly. And then finally, thank you very much for the brilliant comment around Soroptimists, Jane. Hooray for Soroptimists. The Kent Soroptimists did a brilliant project. It's pre-COVID, so it shows how long ago it was, but it still resonates for me. They had a big box which was talking about the issue of modern day slavery. So absolutely, there's always more to be done on that. And again, of course, the Co-op Party in particular has got that strong focus on that, good examples in there. And for me, I think that highlights another really important factor, is that it's great when as a politician you can go, this is a good idea. It's greater still if you can go, this is a good idea, and here's some people that don't happen to wear my party rosette who also think it's a good idea. You know, particularly civic society organisations like the Soroptimists, who I think have got a tremendous track record, obviously, of standing up on the issue of feminism and women's causes, but actually some wider social causes as well. So definitely your group leader, I hope they listen carefully to the phone call that will happen in approximately 24 minutes' time. Thanks very much, Gareth.
Yeah, and just to come back on a couple of things as well, to it is worth noting that I fully respect the point from Joyce. We only have the council elections in England for next year, so there may be a bit of a skew towards England in terms of we've 2,300 seats up on about 34 councils across England. But this will again get refreshed the following year, and obviously as we're looking ahead to 2026 parliamentary elections, and I believe the discussions will be had then around kind of progressing what the policies will be going into those elections. And in terms of the, I think it's a great point from Jim around the financial advice and support. There seems to be multiple avenues through banks, through businesses, through business startup groups, local chambers of commerce around how to set up a business, but there's not as much around how to set up a co-op. And we're getting people like Rachel Reeves talking about doubling the size of the cooperative sector. And hopefully then the money will come with it to enable that to happen, and how people can set up. So yeah, absolutely, we want to be looking at that. And Jane, I'll follow up after this meeting if there's anything we can do to help with progressing the modern slavery charter through your council. It's something that's not gone away. We've had it for quite some time, but until we get every single council, it's always going to be there. So we've got a few more hands up. So I'll just start with Gregor.
Yes, I want to know when company fail by finances, they were get support when company is fail for finances. For example, they no produce.
Sorry, you're a little bit low on the speaker. I'm just struggling to hear a little bit.
Yes,
If you can shout
yes.
a bit.
When company it's fail for finance because they no produce nothing, what where they call? Where should they call?
When a company fails because of its finances.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. We'll grab that question. Thank you. Mike, do you want to jump in next?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Mike Moore. I'm not on this call because I'm a councillor or intend to be a councillor, but I'm a branch secretary, and I was really just looking to see how we can improve the relationship that as a branch we have with our local elective Labour and Co-operative members, because we don't seem to have locally a dialogue within which we can actually exchange ideas on policies and that sort of thing. And I'm kind of hoping really that maybe you have some tips for how I could go about organising that building of that relationship, because I tend to think that we're losing out on a trick here.
Absolutely, thank you. And I'll just take a third question as well. So, Nadeem, do you want to jump in?
Hi there, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, got you there.
That's great. Yeah. So my name's Nadeem Ikram. I'm from Leicestershire, and I'm also a trade union rep, and I work in the police and justice sector. And I was recently become a cooperative member as well. I'm a Labour Party member as well. But I think the manifesto certainly is brilliant. You know, I think there's a good package there, and certainly, you know, the direction that you're taking is fantastic. Now, naturally, working in the police and justice sector, what I'm hearing is that the safer streets element is a big one. And then if businesses need protecting, I think the biggest challenges that they have is crime. And how do we, as a movement, shape that? Because I think what I talk to a lot of shopkeepers, particularly small businesses, and they see their businesses being eroded as a result of shoplifting, particularly, and it's a big crime since COVID. Since COVID, I tell you that shoplifting has increased. It felt as if we were given a free hand that that shoplifters could do what they want, and that's what's happening at the moment. Now, until we get that right, I think the rest of it won't work. It won't fit into shape. I'm not saying it won't work, but we need to get the crime element right, because that's where they're being sucked out their profits, and it's a real issue. So I think the cooperative movement can actually make a massive difference, and I know that they are making headway in some areas nationally. But certainly, I think we start off with the local businesses and how we can support them, those individual. The larger corporations, yes, they can take the impact, but even the large corporations, what we are seeing is that they're having to also look at their finances, and at times, it's affecting their profits. So this impact of safer streets is a massive issue at the moment, and I know that the Labour government are looking at this very closely. But I think we need to be a step ahead, and I think we've got the movement, we've got the resources, but it's all about how do we influence, particularly our law enforcement side, and say, let's make this a priority, because I know there's other priorities, I understand that, but this is affecting a lot of individuals who have got their own businesses, and they're just potentially, like I say, they're going to lose out big time. Thank you.
Thank you. Vince, you want to come back on them, and then I'll pick up anything that you.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, three really excellent questions. So thank you very much for those. And nobody's name began with J that time, although we did have a G. So Grigor, on businesses who are struggling, I mean, I think that this is a broader issue, and again, it will depend a little bit on the kind of governance structures you have. So if it was a business in Medway, for example, that's pretty straightforward. We've got a portfolio holder who is a Labour and cooperative portfolio holder who's got responsibility for business and economic development, and a named officer. We've signed a partnership agreement with FSB Kent. So we've got named individuals for businesses to come to. That will vary across the country. But yeah, my starting point would be checking from a council perspective who's got responsibility in your local authority or authorities for economic development. And some councils, despite really challenging financial circumstances, still may have availability to some loans. Again, if it was someone in Medway, there's a Kent and Medway business fund available. So again, it's about having that knowledge and information for your local area. Mike, you raise a really interesting point. And again, and Gareth will know this, if we've got a weakness in Medway around the cooperative movement, it's our cooperative branch. That in part because all of the officers became councillors, which was pretty rude of them. And then obviously they're stuck doing that, running a council, etc., etc. So I do think, in an ideal model, and Gareth will be able to talk to this a lot more, obviously, with his wider regional focus. But sometimes it's just about cognizance of what each other are doing, occasionally having combined meetings. I think that's a helpful thing. Just having that collective awareness and joining in sessions like today. So at the next Labour Party CLP or branch meeting, you can say, actually, I attended a really fascinating seminar with two blokes with beards on it. And we were supposed to have a third person. They're not here. Don't worry. Kate doesn't have a beard. And they talked about a load of different ideas. Do we want to talk about any of these? And then sharing that with your local cooperative branch would be certainly one model, particularly if at this stage you haven't got Labour and cooperative councillors. It would need to be the two parties, the cooperative party locally and the local CLP, to move that forward. And for the avoidance of doubt, Mike, you might not think today you're going to be a Labour and cooperative councillor, but today isn't tomorrow, just saying. And then Nadeem, thank you for what you do in the criminal justice system. It's important. Gareth will have the exact numbers probably, but when we had the last round of police and crime commissioner elections, we had more Labour and cooperative candidates for that than ever before. A number of really good candidates who were thoughtful. And again, I think if you look at the manifesto ideas, certainly, for example, and that point around shoplifting, I mean, I think there's two, this is not my area of expertise, but broadly, I think there are two aspects to this. And I think there's a dispatches program coming up imminently about serious organised crime shoplifting, and as I would call it, almost cost of living crisis shoplifting. And I think you've got, probably for the first time in history, both happening at the same time. One thing I would suggest is wherever you are, certainly in England and Wales, I think, I'm not sure about Scotland, you'll have a community safety partnership. And it's about trying to make sure that retail crime is on that agenda wherever you can. But three really good questions. Thank you.
Yeah, and just following up, I think we had five or seven police and crime commissioners before last May. We stood about 33 out of 35 of the candidates that stood in May were co-op, which was great. And obviously we've got about 15 now across England and Wales. And I think the fact that we're talking about retail crime and violence against shop workers is already a success thing. We've gotten it on the agenda, so now we see it so regularly on the news that we're actually getting to the point where people are recognizing it as an issue that we have to resolve. And we've done that. We've done that as the Co-op Party with our partners, Labour Party, Usdaw, and shop. Co-op shops, but of course it's not just co-op shops that are suffering, but actually all shops are, and all big or small. So working through with the police and crime commissioners, working through police and crime panels, actually trying to improve that situation, and it, not to downplay it, but even simple things like busting the myth that you can steal up to £200, which was always a myth, but people then felt you couldn't ring the police to get them out because it won't be prosecuted, when actually that was something much further down the line. So I know the Lancashire Police and Crime Commissioner is keen to enforce at home that every theft is a theft, however big or small. So it all needs to be looked at in the whole. Mike, absolutely, I'll follow up with you after this if we can come along, or if we can get stuck into your local area to speak to them about these manifesto ideas, and hopefully, I've been a part of some within the Labour Party previously. We're trying to come up with ideas, trying to think, well, actually, you might be the one that comes forward with those ideas already made and say these are great policies, drop them in the manifesto. But if myself or your local organiser are able to get an invite, we'll very happily come and speak about it. And just a final point, just around the supporting businesses, who might be struggling. There's, it might be a longer term goal, but things around looking at employee ownership and mutualising. So there are things that we can look at, and that's another element of potentially doubling the size of the co-op sector. So we're racing through the night, but we actually have magically 3 hands, and we do have a Jay from Scotland. But I will start with Linda, if you want to jump in with a question. Have we still got you, Linda? Okay, I'll jump over to Ivan, but we can come back to you if you're still on the call. Ivan?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Ivan Ambrose from Ipswich. I'm a member of the Labour Party and the Co-operative Party. I'm also speaking on behalf of the autism community. For 14 years, we had a terrible lack of adult autism support services throughout the country, but particularly bad in Ipswich and Suffolk. The last Labour government brought in the Autism Act in 2009, which was meant to provide adult autism support services. But for 14 years, the Tories done absolutely nothing. Is this something which could be picked up on and addressed by the Co-operative Party in partnership with the Labour Party and autism charities? And my last point was how can we reach out to more autistic people to join the Co-operative Party and for them to get involved to make the party even more diverse? Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ivan. Linda, I'll jump back to you now. Oh, sorry, wrong person to unmute. There we go. Are you able to unmute, Linda? I'll jump over to Jordan. If you can unmute at some point, you can jump in with your question. Jordan, do you want to come in?
Yep, Gareth, and thank you for remembering I'm from Scotland. So I'm not quite sure who to address this to, maybe one of our original Scottish people that came in at the end. I'm working with a local community centre who is run by a SCIO, a Scottish Charity Incorporated organisation. And I was just wondering how that type of setup can maybe interplay with a cooperative, or if one's better than the other. I think the SCIO thing is that they can access a lot of funding. Is that similar? Does the co-op movement help when, oh, sorry, I should have said, it's talking about a community asset transfer. So the council wants to change the funding model. That's one of the options. So it's just to kind of explore that, kick it around a little bit and see what might be good to propose.
Thank you. Is that all the questions? I've not got Linda. Okay. Just coming back on the first of those points, Ivan. Thanks very much for that. We do have the equalities networks within the Co-operative Party, and we do a huge amount of promotion, particularly within the disability network. Jen Hemingway is our equalities officer, and actually we're going through the network elections, which I'll just give a quick plug for now. There should be an email in your inbox to decide if you want to put yourself forward for a nomination to sit on any of our network committees. So we're hoping for a good number of nominations to come in, but that is definitely something that we can raise with the network committee for disability, whether we can, work with partners to diversify our membership even further and support people with autism and grow that with our Labour partners. Jordan, we're coming towards the end of the meeting, but if yourself, Joyce, want to pop your email address into the chat to myself, I'll be able to link you up, and we'd be interested to have a chat about community asset transfer up in Scotland. And I know that Joe Fagan has been involved in that as well. So there are some examples we can look at. Vince, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, a couple of bits. Firstly, Ivan, thanks for raising this issue. And I think I think the Labour Party and the Co-operative Party, I've been involved for more than 20 years. And I think both are in a better place than they were when it comes to the issue of neurodiversity and the related matters. Is there more work to be done by the Labour Party? Yes. Is there more work to be done by the Co-op Party? Yes. And it needs good people like yourself, Ivan, to keep reminding key decision makers. And as Gareth said, become a key decision maker on those committees. I think that's always important. And certainly, I can certainly speak, and I know she's very open about this. So one of my overview and scrutiny chairs is neurodiverse, and she does a fantastic job standing up for children and young people, and I'm really proud of the work that she does. On Jordan's point more generally, I mean, I am not an expert in Scottish local government and corporate law, so I'm not going to comment on that specifically, but I think the general point is well made that when councils are considering assets of community value generally, and then specifically potentially handing over, each different thing they could be handing over to does come with pros and cons, opportunities and challenges. So a fully fledged charity is different to an unincorporated group, is different to a CIO or a CIC. So all of those different things. So from that perspective, I think, yeah, definitely. And then I recognise, particularly in Scotland, less so in Wales. And unfortunately, despite my desire, we don't have any representation in Northern Ireland. That wouldn't be my choice, but I'm not in charge. So I think definitely, linking those people like Gareth is a brilliant thing. But yeah, more generally for people thinking about that, absolutely recognise that whatever organisation you're looking to, assign the asset to, that comes with opportunities but challenges as well. It's not a simple pathway always. So brilliant, and a really great set of questions. So real privilege to listen to them. So thanks to everybody who logged on tonight.
And just on that, though, the ongoing running course for us, listing assets of community value, securing asset transfers, that for us isn't the end game. That's almost the beginning of the journey of that becoming community owned, and how we actually support that. And like I say, there are funding partners that these groups can actually tap into that councils, for example, wouldn't be able to. But it can't ever. It can't be seen as a way of offloading assets either. So it's what's best for the community, whether something remains in council ownership but a lot of the work we're doing around this is registering assets of private ownership and bringing that into the community as well. So I've just popped the link back into the chat again. I realised when I copy and pasted earlier, it might not have come through, but it's party.coop/local/manifesto. We're just coming up to the hour. Unfortunately, Kate wasn't able to join us, but we'll hear from her again. She's building a cooperative slate there to stand for election down in Cornwall. But what I'd like to say is, again, this meeting tonight, this briefing, this isn't just the end of it. This is the start of it. If this has sparked any questions, get in touch with us. Drop me an email. Drop any of the generic Co-op Party emails a note, and it'll come through to me. You'll find Vince all over social media. So all I can say is thank you all so much for joining the call tonight. But massive thanks to Vince, because he's one of our key champions for cooperation, has helped build this movement even before I was working for the party. So thanks very much, Vince. I know you've got to get to another meeting shortly, so I hope you have a good evening. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.